Hello, and welcome back to this last of our short series of lectures on ethical relativism. And within this video, we're going to take a look at applying ethical relativism within the world of science. Slides to advance. So we're going to start out with a relatively simple example. Over here, we've got James Watson and Francis Crick, who were co-discoverers of the structure of DNA. They were the first to describe it in 1953, and it was a very important model for biology and very important model for genetics and DNA and a lot of things that have come through that over the past roughly 70 years. It's so important that when as biologists, we teach about DNA and how DNA is structured and how DNA act. We're going to generally refer to this as the Watson and Crick DNA model. So you can see it over here on the right-hand portion of the slide. So we got two scientists that were very instrumental in our understanding about how DNA is structured, and then from that, how DNA works. Now, this was such a monumental discovery. James Watson over here, as well as Francis Crick and one other individual doing research at that same time, received the 1962 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine for that discovery. So again, recognizing that this is an incredibly important discovery, incredibly important to the world of biology. And so if we take a look at this, just some recent articles that, I just pulled a couple quick ones out. So Emory University participating in a trial to test messenger RNA HIV vaccine in humans. So coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've learned a lot about messenger RNA vaccines. And now we're looking at applying that, essentially this RNA and DNA kind of related molecules. We need to understand how DNA works to understand how RNA works. But we've got this opportunity to potentially, come up with a vaccine against HIV and AIDS after, what is it, almost 40 some years now that we've been looking for a cure. Recombinant protein market. So basically getting some type of organism, oftentimes a bacteria, to produce things that we need. And so a common example of that is producing human insulin in bacterial cells so that diabetes patients don't mount an immune response if they're getting pig insulin. And so incredibly huge, lots of chemistry, lots of other things going on, but roughly a $4 billion market by 2030. Again, based on the work that Watson and Crick did. And then finally, a little bit older article over here, but we're looking at modifying different types of food crops to make them more productive, to make them more nutritious, to have more vitamins in it, if we take a look at that. Again, based on this view and understanding of the DNA molecule made possible by the work of Watson and Crick. Now, if we take a look at this, over the last 70 years since that time, James Watson over here has made some really troubling comments. He's come across with very racist comments. He's been against homosexual individuals. He's made a lot of misogynist comments about women, and because of that, we're seeing that he's lost a lot of his honorary titles. He's basically being, kind of ostracized within the field of science because his views are antithetical to what the views are accepted within society today. And so if we take a look at this then, the question is, what do we do in a situation where you've got, a famous scientist that is very important for kind of the state of the field as it is today, but in a situation where, the work he's done since then is more troubling. The work he's done, and at least maybe even not the work, the statements he's made are increasingly controversial. And so if we take a look at this, we see, and again, coming out of 2020 and the civil unrest based on a lot of things that were going on there, there's this move to recognize the fallacies, recognize the mistakes that have been made in the past, and ideally kind of cleanse the field, to overcome the racist legacy, the sexist legacy, whatever kind of category you want to put it in. The scientists of the past, living according to their principles at the time, would not be looked at favorably by what we've got in our views of the world around us today. So in some cases, we saw a lot of Confederate statues being torn down in 2020 and 2021. Universities are now doing, kind of something similar. They're looking at their past. They're looking at, the people that were donors to the university that may have a building named after them, or famous alumni, or people that were recognized in the past that have had troubling incidents in their past, and because of that would be viewed unfavorably in society today. And trying to figure out, how we, kind of move on from the past without really celebrating those individuals that aren't living up to the standards of today. And so within science, and this is just a simple infographic kind of going through, in here in blue, we've got the Watson and Crick discovery in 1953. But, discovery of recombinant DNA technology, synthetic genes, PCR, a way to amplify the DNA, all of this stuff kind of going on over here is dependent upon these past discoveries. Scientific progress builds upon the work of others, and we don't always have the ability to know what was going on in their minds or the way that they were acting. So if we take a look at this, and again, this is a quote that has been attributed to Sir Winston Churchill, "Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." He said it. He probably wasn't the first one to say it. If you dig around in there, this is from a little bit earlier than 1905. I'll probably badly mispronounce this. The Americanized version of this name is George Santayana, but he's George Agustin Nicolas Ruiz de Santayana y Borras. He basically said those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So a variation of what was attributed to Churchill. But then the question becomes, how should we address the accomplishments of scientists with disreputable activities? Those people that did important scientific things, but in other areas of their life did not live true to the standards that we've got today. And again, looking at this view of ethical relativism. Assuming that the science was conducted ethically, how should the work of a disreputable scientist be addressed? Scientists, we reference past work that is important for current research so that others can understand the basis of our discoveries, the basis of our work. And therefore, you've got to lay the groundwork and say, okay, this is where it's coming from to lead to where it's going, to provide the establishment. For students in a science course, does it matter if the topics are in high school, undergrad, or graduate courses? We talk about the Watson and Crick DNA molecule, the DNA model. How do we address that when we recognize, the troubling statements that Watson has made about important individuals within our society? What do we do in public venues, such as named buildings, universities with residence halls and science halls that are named after people, scholarships that are named after people, honorary awards, museum exhibits? What do we do with that? Do we kind of erase those individuals from history, or do we, put an asterisk in and try to explain, what their viewpoint was and why that viewpoint is troubling to us today? So that finishes up our view of ethical relativism. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you, and have a great day.